Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very, very welcome to today's episode of the Passion to Profits podcast. Now, in today's podcast episode, we're going to talk about you taking action because you're not going to get anywhere unless you take action. And I see a lot of people who are scared of taking action because they just don't know what they should be doing. Or maybe they've got too many options. You know, they're like a kid in the candy store. There is just shelves full of candy and they just don't know where to begin. I know what that's like. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with what action should you take, who should you follow, what books should you read, and we just, acquire all this knowledge, we watch all the content, and then we just kind of are scared of taking action because we don't know what to do. So this podcast episode is for you, if that's where you find yourself in today. Now, today's podcast episode is based roughly on a book I'm reading or rereading at the moment called The 1% Rule by Tommy Baker. Now, I would recommend if you can get a chance maybe to hop over to the Kindle store, pick up a copy. Now, I'm not making any money of it. I just think it's a really good book and I know it will help you get started because a lot of us, as I said, we get overwhelmed. Now, the kind of main gist of that book by Tommy Baker is that what we need to do is we need to try and get 1% better every day. Now, that's not too big of a task to ask of you, is it? To be 1% better. You know, we look at the people who've got the washboard abs. We look at the people who have the huge social media following. We've got the people who've got the mansions and the sports cars. And we want to jump from where we are to where they are in a single leap. And that seems like it's just a fantasy. It seems like it's something that we'll never be able to do. And because of where we are compared to those other people, that gap seems so big. And we give up before we start. Now, if you put Tommy Baker's advice into action, which is getting 1% better every day, can you imagine if you were 365% better than you are right now? Now, that would be a huge difference. And that is just over the course of a year. And that is simply just getting 1% better every day. That's simply just adjusting your habits, adding activities or getting rid of activities, and just simply getting 1% better. Now, I'm sure you can see by just improving 1% better, it takes a lot of pressure off you because you don't need to, to do what those other people are doing. You need to just improve yourself 1%. And then in 12 months from now, you'll be 365% different than you are right now. Can you imagine being 3 times better than you are right now? 3 times better maybe on video, 3 times maybe better as a writer, 3 times maybe more popular on social media. Can you imagine that? And that is just simply getting 1% better every day. So as I said, I'm basing this podcast episode around that book because I see a lot of people who are afraid to take action because there's so much that they need to do. So what I'd say to you is when it comes to taking action, and again, going back to Tommy Baker's book, we need to break down our goals into smaller goals. You know, we might have this lovely fantasy of being a millionaire or a billionaire, but if we're broke, that gap is a huge gap. And it's a gap that it's a gap that our brain can't comprehend. So what we need to do is we need to break it down into smaller tasks. So if you haven't made any money online, your goal could be maybe for this month is to make $100 a month. Forget the 1,000, forget the 10,000, 100,000, million. Just $100. And then what you need to do is you need to think to yourself, well, how could I make $100 this month? And then you break it down into a smaller goal. And then you break it down into daily actions. And then those daily actions that you take every day, again, will be a 1% better. So that over the next 30 days, hopefully you'll get closer to that goal of making $100. Now you may surpass it. You may get $200, $300. But at least you're working towards a smaller target. And then when you reach the $100, then you can push it out a little bit. You can go maybe 500 if you want to, or maybe 1,000. And again, break down how you would make $1,000 in a month into daily actions, and then take those daily actions. And I'm sure you can see, even though you want to get to the $1 million, you want to have all that money, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, $1,000 or $100, that's a measly amount. That's not worth my time and my effort. But what you need to realize is that is one point on your journey, that you're going to go through the $100 range, then you're going to get into the $1,000 range, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. So you're going to have to go on all these points to get there. You're not going to go from 0 to 1 million in one single leap. unless maybe you win the lottery. But how many how many times is that going to happen for any of us? It might never happen. So you can, buy your lottery tickets, you can pray, you can dream, you can visualize, or you can simply just take action. Just small daily actions that's going to bring you closer to where you want to get to. Now, what you need to do is sometimes maybe break it down to one action that you take every day. Just one single step. Again, sometimes because we have so many actions we need to take, it's very easy to procrastinate. It'd be very easy for me to say, well, I've got to do a video today, I've got to do a podcast episode, I have to do some stuff on YouTube, I have to put something on my blog. And it's easy for me to look at all those actions and just be overwhelmed before I even start. But what if I say to myself today, well, Barry, what we're simply going to do is we're going to record one video. We're just going to take one video, we're going to chop it up, we're going to put it into as many places as we can, and that's what we're going to do. And then tomorrow, we're going to do the same thing. And the next day, we're going to do the same thing. So all I'm simply doing is recording one video. Now, that can be my action step. That doesn't mean you need to take my action step. But your action step could be maybe just to write a blog post. It could be maybe to put something on Facebook. It could be maybe trying to get people to join your email list. But just some simple step that you can take over and over and over again. And again, by having this little goal in the future, those action steps should take you closer to where you want to get to. Now, what you're going to find as well too is that you need to forget the idea of perfection. A lot of us get this idea that we need to be perfect in our actions. We need to write the perfect blog posts. We need to create the perfect videos. We need to be the perfect person on a podcast. And because we put so much pressure on ourselves before we even start, that puts a lot of stress on us. And again, the easiest thing to do is to head to the exit door and not show up today. So what I'd say to you instead is to think, like Tommy Burns says, trying to get 1% better. You're not trying to get 100 or 200 or 300% better. You're simply trying to get 100% better. So if you show up today and record a video, do it to your best ability and then just let it go. And then tomorrow, when you show up for your next video, just keep this thought in your mind. How can I make this video 1% better than it was yesterday? You mightn't even notice the difference. Maybe your audience mightn't even notice the difference. But just aiming to be 1% better than you were the day before is going to slowly build that graph. You're going to start going up. Again, tomorrow, we're going to go back to another video. We're going to record that video, but we're going to try and be 1% better than we were the day before. Again, it's just a simple thing. It probably seems like it's tiny and minute, but as I said, if you did that for a full year, your videos in 12 months from now would be 365% better than they are. Your writing would be 365% better than it is right now. So I'm sure you can see the huge difference over the span of a year. And maybe over 2 years, over 3 years, you're going to take that percentage even higher. And you might find that maybe as you kind of develop, you're going to find that maybe on days you're not going to be maybe 1% better. You could be maybe 2% better. You could be 3% better. You could be 5% better. And then all of a sudden that graph just skyrockets away off, depending on how long you keep doing it. So you need to forget the idea of perfection. Think of consistency, of showing up again and again and again. Now, I remember reading a quote by the great comedian Jerry Seinfeld. And one thing that he said improved him as a comedian was writing jokes. And what he used to do was he used to write one joke every day. One joke. Didn't matter how good it was or how bad it was. He would force himself to write one original joke every day. And what he did was when he wrote that joke, he went over the calendar and put an X on it. And then tomorrow when he showed up again, he wrote another joke. And again he went to the calendar, put another X on it. And what his mission was that he couldn't break those chains of X's on the calendar. That as they were kind of, more and more were appearing on the calendar, that was a chain that he didn't want to break. Because if he broke that chain, he would have to start another chain. Now, I think that's a great idea, and it's a great kind of visual thing for us to kind of look at, in that when we see all those red X's or whatever on our calendar, we kind of think to ourselves, well, something, I've been doing this for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I don't want to break the chain. I want to keep it going. And you will probably find it will help motivate you on days where maybe you're tired and you don't want to do the work. When you look at that chain of X's on the calendar, you're thinking to yourself, if I stop now, that chain is broke I'm sure it might force you to sit your butt in the seat, record your video, do your writing, or whatever you need to do. But I think it's a simple thing that you can use, maybe just visually, just to kind of push yourself along to keep that consistency going, is not to break the chain of the X's on the calendar. Now, another thing I'd say to you as well too is to use tools, but don't allow them to control you. You know, you're going to find over time that you will probably need to add some tools to your toolkit. In that maybe you might have to use some tools maybe to edit your videos. You might have to maybe add some tools maybe to your website or your blog, or you will find eventually you will be adding tools as you kind of grow. But what I'd say to you as well too is don't get carried away with the tools, because sometimes when we look at everybody else, we are looking at their tools. And so they're talking about using AI to do this, or they're talking about using autoresponders on this, and they're talking about this tool and that tool. And it's very easy for us as a beginner to kind of jump on to where they are and say to ourselves, well, I must be using the same tools, or I need to use the same tools as they do. And sometimes as a beginner, when you jump into using a tool that you've never used before, and it's complicated, and there's a kind of learning curve to go with it, it kind of knocks us back. And what we do is we spend more time trying to learn how to use that tool instead of actually taking action. So what I'd say to you is, if you are thinking of using any tools, use the tools that will maybe take some of your workload off you, not actually give you more work, in that you need to study this tool for hours to learn how to use it. Try and go for the most simple tool that you can. And you might find that maybe right now in the beginning, you're probably not going to need any tools, because it's just going to be simply you making your videos or writing your blog posts or doing whatever it is. So the tools can come at another point. But just as you do maybe see some tools, just ask yourself that question. How long would it take me to get to grips on that? Will I be able to understand it in a couple of hours and be able to use it tomorrow? Is it going to take maybe a week? Is it going to take a month? Is it going to take 3 months? And then I want you to think about how much time you're going to have to put into learning that tool, and how much that is taking away from what you should be doing. Now, you can probably bet that the best thing you can probably do instead of learning that tool is creating content, is writing ebooks, is creating digital products, or doing whatever your audience needs. That is probably more a valuable thing for you, instead of getting distracted with all the bells and whistles and all the tools that everyone else is using. And you might find that maybe at some point, maybe those tools will change. And by the time you get to that point where you thought you were going to be using that tool, there may be some AI tool or something at this stage that you can simply use. But by that stage, you'll be more kind of knowledgeable. You'll know yourself, you'll know your business, and you'll know what you need to be using. So don't get distracted with the tools in the beginning, because that's what it is. It is a distraction. Focus on the solid work that needs to be done, that's moving your business in the right direction. Another thing I'd say to you as well too is measure your progress. I've said this many times on this podcast, is that sometimes when we take action, we feel that the action we're taking is moving us in the right direction. And sometimes you find that that action isn't taking us anywhere. That we've, at the end of the day, after recording a video or writing a blog post or whatever, we feel, well, something, I've done a good solid day. I think I am moving my business in the right direction. And then we go back and we watch the stats on the videos, and we find this past 3 weeks or so, nobody's watching our videos. Or we find that nobody's reading our blog posts. Or we find that the content we're putting on a certain platform isn't working. And what you need to do is you need to keep an eye on what's working and not working. And and not working, so that you don't become a busy fool that's not making any progress. I want you, if you are taking action, to be moving in the right direction, to have the needle moving in the right direction, and having smaller goals like trying to aim for $100 a month or a certain amount of subscribers. Those are kind of goals that you can keep an eye on. And as the time passes, if you're not getting closer to that goal, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to ask yourself, well, did I do the best that I could? Did I show up consistently? Am I invested in this? Am I giving it everything that I've got? Again, don't get too carried away in thinking that, you need to be a superhuman. Just, again, go back to Tommy Baker's 1% rule. Are you using the 1% rule to your advantage? Are you trying to get a little bit better every day? Or are you just showing up and just maybe not committed? Maybe that could be why you're not getting actually closer to that goal. So bear in mind, think of the 1% rule. Are you moving in the right direction? Are you getting closer to the $100, to the 100 subscribers, or whatever smaller target that you have? And by actually keeping an eye on that and measuring your progress, you are going to be going in the right direction. Because I've seen loads of people who think, well, I'm taking action, I'm writing this, I'm making this, I'm doing this, and they're not going anywhere because nobody's watching the content, nobody's reading the blog posts, nobody's on that platform that they're putting the content on. So what you need to do is you need to stop doing the actions that don't work, and you need to give that 1% effort to something that is working so that it is pushing you in the right direction. And then finally, what I'd say to you as well too is to celebrate your wins. Now, this is something that I'm guilty of. I don't celebrate my wins as often as I should. I should celebrate my wins more often. I should celebrate my wins for that I showed up maybe 6 or 7 days in a row and recorded videos. I should celebrate, the amount of new subscribers that I get, but I almost have this kind of shark mindset in that I'm always looking forward. I'm always looking for the next kind of target that I need to go after, instead of actually just pausing for a moment and actually just stopping and smelling the roses. So I don't want you to be as bad as me, because what we're doing is, by not actually celebrating our progress, is we're not actually, admiring the work that our subconscious and our conscious mind is doing. And what we're doing is we're just ignoring it. We're just saying, let's get on to the next goal. Let's get on to the next goal. But your little subconscious mind, or your big subconscious mind, needs some reinforcement. It needs to know that it's doing the right thing, that it's getting you in the right direction. And pausing for a moment is a good way to reflect. And also, if you pause and actually think of what you've done, it's going to make you feel better about yourself. Because sometimes when we, jump from goal to goal, we don't kind of reflect on how we've grown as a person. When you maybe have reached $100 and you all of a sudden now you're jumping on to $1,000 and that's where your eye is set, it's very easy just to get maybe disheartened when you're not getting closer to the $1,000. But if you just pause for a moment and just think to yourself, you know something? I can easily make $100 a month. Yes, it may be a small amount, but I know that there are lots of people out there who can't even make $100 a month. And the fact that I've done it is something that I should pat myself on the back for. So celebrate your small wins, celebrate your progress, celebrate those little X's on the calendar, because they are wonderful achievements. And as I said, it's going to help you feel better about yourself. And by you actually focusing on your own lane, focusing on getting 1% better, what it's going to do is it's going to make you look inward. It's going to make you stop looking outward and stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Because by improving 1% every day, you're going to find that you're not worried about those people who are ahead of you. You're not worried about the competition. You're not worried about this or that or the other. You're just simply concentrating on what you're doing. And that is just getting 1% better every day. You know that if you keep doing that, again, 365% of a difference in a year, but you know at some point you will catch up with those people. And you might find that you might actually surpass those people because you are just simply plodding along, doing 1% every day. So I hope this podcast helped you, because I know what it's like to just be overwhelmed with all the knowledge out there, all the actions that should be taken. And because you're overwhelmed, it's very easy just to procrastinate and not take action on what you should be doing. So if you have any comments, please feel free to leave them below this video. I'd love to know how you think of it. And as I said, if you do want to grab a copy of The 1% Rule, again, I'm making no money on this book, but it is a book that I have read and reread, and it is a wonderful way of just rewiring the nonsense that we have in our head. So if you do search for Tommy Baker, 1% Rule, I'm sure you will find the book in the Kindle store, and I would recommend you grab a copy. So as always, have a lovely day. Take care. Bye-bye.